Hey guys, welcome to our second edition and our second half of Greek civilization. So where we left off, we were talking about King Philip II, and we said that King Philip II was the ruler of Macedonia, and he always had this envy of his neighbor, which was Greece, and he envied like all the things that Greece accomplished according to like their science and their history and their philosophy and their drama and so forth. So all the things that we talked about, King Philip II really envied those items. So in his mind, he's going to say, well, if Greece is continually fighting with each other and they can't come to grips to figure out like who their leaders should be, Philip II thought, well, what if I come in and take over everything and I could unite these city-states together and make Greece really what it should be, this great area, all united under King Philip II under Macedonia. So we said in the end of our last Edpuzzle video that he went one city-state by the next, okay, because nobody was fighting together, and he either bribed them to join with him or he just simply took them over in battle. Okay, so as Philip II takes over all of Greece, obviously he's not going to stop there. He's going to look and he's going to say, well, how about we take over more land? Okay, so he's going to unite these city-states and he's going to lead them to take over Persia during this time frame. Okay, the problem was during this time frame he was killed, which is very common since these areas are so consumed with conflict. You know, it was highly likely that these leaders died in battle. So when he passed away, his kingdom goes to his son, which is Alexander. And Alexander is going to become king at age 20. Okay, so King Alexander, as we looked at this leadership role, when he took over, he was fully prepared to become leader of Greece, of Macedonia. We might say at age 20, my goodness, you know, we're really just trying to find out like who we are, becoming adults, you know, and I don't think any of us would really go out and say, well, I'm going to rule this land and take over more land and be this massive king. Okay, but Alexander really started preparing for this from an early age. Okay, by age 16, he was already one of the main commanders in the army. Okay, at age 16, you know, we're just hoping to get our driver's license, you know, very different time frame. So he becomes a commander in the army, and he, you know, attempted to earn respect of his soldiers at that time. So he didn't demand respect; he earned it. He would go out first into battle. He would show the soldiers that he was strong, and so on. Okay, so once he took over, he was going to fulfill his father's dream, and he's going to take over one of the largest empires in the world, which we called Persia at this time. Okay, so in 3334 BC, okay, he's going to go up against one of the most powerful militaries in the world. Okay, because Persia, remember, had that professional military, very similar to Sparta did at this time. Okay, so at this time, he's going to unite the Greek cavalry, those soldiers on horseback, and they're going to be very successful. They're fast, they could attack fast, and so on. Excuse me. So with the cavalry, they're going to win a lot of battles, you know, like early on. Okay, and at this time, okay, the king of Persia, which was Darius III, okay, he's going to say, well, what do we do here? I'm going to flee from this area of land because if I don't flee, we're going to lose. So they fled. Okay, now what you could do as King Alexander, they could chase him down, okay, and take him over, but he decided not to do that. Okay, so King Alexander decided, well, why don't we take over some more land? So instead of chasing after Darius III, why don't we go on and take over more land in the surrounding area? Okay, so they take over Egypt during this time. They built a huge city which they named Alexandria, which we still have today, obviously named after King Alexander, and it became the center of business and trade. Okay, then they marched east, taking over all of Persia and then moving on to India. So if we look at this time, okay, the area under King Alexander is going to contain Macedonia, Greece, and all of Persia. This is going to be the largest land area owned by one person. Okay, at this time, the soldiers are going to say, can we stop? Okay, we've been fighting. We fought through Greece. You know, we fought through the Asian Minor. We fought through Persia and Egypt. You know, can we stop? Can we just go home? And Alexander's going to say, you're right. You know, we did take over all this land. You are dedicated soldiers. Let's go home. So he's going to lead all his soldiers back to their original home of Macedonia. Okay, a lot of soldiers are going to lose their life along the way. Okay, by 332, they're going to make it to Babylon. okay, which again was a Persian city. But Alexander is going to actually die during this time frame. So he gets sick, he contacts a disease, and he's going to die at 32. Okay, so if we look at 32, that's not very long. Excuse me. Okay, but his legacy is going to live on. So Alexander was this great person. He becomes this leader from 16 to 32. In these years that really we find ourselves, okay, Alexander goes on to lead this army into this massive amount of empire. Okay, so if we look at Alexander, he was considered this general that really feared nothing. He's going to go out, okay, and he's going to lead his soldiers into, the great unknown, and he's going to come through for them. He's going to take over land. He's going to bring them home when needed. Okay, because he took over so much land during his time frame, we know that he is given the title the Great. Okay, so we have Alexander the Great. Okay, so if we look at this time, with this vast empire, all those Greek cultural ideas, whether it was mythology or language, science, is all going to spread throughout this whole area. So if we look at all of this, okay, we're going to call this the Hellenistic era. Okay, Hellenistic simply means like the Greeks. Okay, so if we look over those first people that started Greece off, we called them the Hellenists, the Greeks. Okay, so they're going to call this a Hellenistic era. Okay, so Greek culture is going to spread from Greece to Macedonia through all of Persia. Okay, all the area of land, okay, that Alexander conquered. So while Alexander hoped to unite like this huge empire, okay, they're going to realize after he dies that who's going to own all of this empire. So they decided to split it into 4 kingdoms. Okay, they believe that one person couldn't control everything. So similar to Persia, when they divided into the satrapies, they're going to divide into 4 kingdoms. So we look at Macedonia, Pergamum, Egypt, and Seleucid. Those are 4 kingdoms with 4 different kings. The idea behind this was that in all 4 kingdoms, those leaders were going to rule together. So they made some rules, like everybody in these kingdoms had to speak Greek. They moved people, Macedonians, Greeks moved throughout all of these areas to keep control. If we look at Alexandria, which was located in Egypt, that was the largest city of the empire. It contained a lighthouse, 2 harbors, had this huge library. Okay, and later on this is going to become like the center of the civilization. Okay, so the Hellenistic kings, these kings that ruled all 4 areas, they're going to invite people to work into the newly conquered area. They wanted to unite. Because when people became united, remember, they felt good. Excuse me. They felt good. They felt like they were a part of something. They didn't feel divided and weak and so on. Okay, so Greek culture spread widely at this time. Okay, so as we're looking at this map, this is the Hellenistic kingdom. So this is all of Greece, okay, that Alexander the Great really controlled. So we have the area in Egypt, okay, we have the area of Persia in green, okay, we have the orange areas, the Seleucid, and so on. So the amount of land that they controlled is actually really huge. Okay, so during this time, we know that all of culture is going to continue. So philosophy and science and writers all moved into Southeast Asia and Egypt. Alexandria, like we mentioned on the slide before, becomes really the center of learning. It's going to replace Athens as the center of Greek culture. Okay, if we look at the building statues, okay, they're going to rebuild cities, okay, throughout Persia, throughout India, to make them look Greek. Okay, so they're going to hang on to that classical Greek architecture, the white buildings, the pillars, and so on. Okay, they wanted everything to embrace that Greek culture. They did spend a lot of money in order to make this happen. Okay, because if you're going to rebuild a whole city to look one way, right, you're really just starting over. Oops. Sculptors at this time started to make statues not of like the perfect person like we talked about before with the perfect body and muscles and so on, but rather they're going to look at like the anger and sadness that they found. Okay, now the Hellenistic kings really supported the writers during this times. So if we look at some of the myths that we know about, we learn about Jason and his band of heroes called the Argonauts. So we look at these myths. We know that they go on adventures, they're seeking the golden fleece and so on. Okay, during this time we know that the drama is going to expand. Athens really became the center for Greek theater. Okay, so we're going to look at those dramas. Comedies are really going to come about at this time. We said that usually they focus on the tragedies. Okay, but now they're going to look at love and relationships among ordinary people and so on. Menander becomes one of the great Greek dramatists at this time. Okay, now as we look at this, okay, we're going to notice that, things are just continuing on. Okay, so Greece is going to go through all of these different eras, so like philosophy and science and so forth. Excuse me, I got this terrible cough. Okay, but what we're going to see is that philosophy is going to go forward and medicine and science, but we're going to save that for like a real short video on this next part, and we're going to stop here.